On the scorched plains of Verakai, where twin suns beat relentlessly against a fractured sky, Dr. Elias Varn adjusted the sand-streaked filter mask over his face and trudged forward. The dust stirred with each step, curling around his boots like smoke. Behind him, the vast silhouette of the YRRKeth research outpost stood like a metal thorn in the skin of the desert, its towers gleaming with indifference. He tapped his comm, survey beacon Epsilon 4, southern perimeter sweep complete. No mineral variants. Noted, came a terse response from the outpost. The voice belonged to Commander Zyril, lead xenologist and eternal reminder of Elias's place at the bottom of the galactic food chain. Elias sighed and killed the channel. To the YRRKeth, humans were quaint. Useful, perhaps, in the way one might consider a persistent insect useful for clearing smaller nuisances. Elias, a xenobiologist of modest repute back on Earth, had arrived under the Precursor Integration Program, an initiative meant to foster species cooperation. Instead, he found himself relegated to data entry and terrain mapping, his actual qualifications drowned beneath layers of alien condescension. The wind shifted, carrying with it a low, almost imperceptible sound. Not mechanical, not geological, organic. He stopped. Amid the spines of jagged black rock to the west, something pale glinted. He turned off his scanner and knelt. His fingers brushed against warm stone, then something slick. Blood. Not red. Silvery white, like mercury spilt beneath moonlight. He moved cautiously between the stones until he saw it. Curled like a broken sculpture, ribs heaving shallowly, lay a creature unlike any in the YRRKeth bestiary. Serpentine limbs, half-folded wings, scales as white as salt. Its eyes flickered open, pupils narrow and glassy with pain. It tried to rise, then collapsed with a wheeze. A dragon, or something close enough to evoke centuries of myth. Elias didn't think. He acted. He unpacked the medkit from his satchel, ran diagnostics, patched tears, sealed wounds. The creature flinched, but didn't resist. He whispered to it, not because he expected it to understand, but because silence in the face of such pain felt inhuman. Hours passed. As night crept over Verakai, cloaking the sky in bruised indigo, the creature stirred. Its eyes met his, and for a moment something passed between them. Recognition, not of species, but of vulnerability. "You need a name," he said softly. "Can't keep calling you the creature." It blinked. Kaelara, he decided aloud, means lightborn in Old Terran. He wrapped her in a thermal tarp and activated the hover sled. The outpost security scan snapped into alert mode the moment he crossed the perimeter, but he transmitted a forged clearance protocol before anyone could interfere. Inside his personal quarters, isolated, unimportant, the perfect hiding place, he converted a disused hydroponics bay into a makeshift med bay. For 3 days, Elias nursed Kaelara back from the brink. She didn't eat at first. Then, gradually, she accepted nutrient paste and water. Her injuries, deep gouges, and what looked like plasma burns, healed with stunning speed. When she tried to stand, he was there, helping her with quiet persistence. And when she growled in her throat, low, uncertain, he smiled. "Don't worry, I've been growled at by worse." On the 4th day, the door to his lab opened uninvited. Commander Zyril's obsidian-scaled face twisted in derision as his gaze settled on Kaelara. "You harbor a bio-threat in direct violation of Planetary Protocol 7C. Elias stood tall. "She was dying. She is wild, dangerous, unclassified. What you've done is not compassion. It's recklessness. She's intelligent. She is vermin." Zyril turned, barking orders. Within minutes, 2 YRRKeth guards loomed to the threshold, pulse lances ready. Kaelara hissed, wings flaring protectively around Elias. Stand down. Elias moved between them. You'll have to kill me to get to her. You are inconsequential, Terran. Do not test the limits of our patience. Elias took a step forward. Then test mine. The standoff lasted only seconds, but the implications rippled outward. Zyril, to Elias's surprise, ordered the guards to lower their weapons. Fine, he said. Keep your lizard. When she slaughters you in your sleep, we will not mourn. They left, but the damage had been done. Word spread. Where before he had been a curiosity, now Elias became a joke. Whispers followed him in the corridors, snide remarks flung with the effortless cruelty of those who needed no justification for disdain. The Hierarcheth research logs deleted his contributions. His clearance was revoked. He was reassigned to geological tagging. Manual, thankless, meaningless work. Kaelara grew stronger, faster, smarter. She mimicked vocal tones, learned to associate symbols with concepts. She watched him with unsettling intensity, like she was learning not just about him, but from him. They sat together often, beyond the outpost's range, under the sky split by burning moons and shifting stars. Out there, Elias told her once, they think we're mistakes. You, because you don't fit their taxonomy. Me, because I dare to care. Kaelara's tail flicked lightly over the sand, etching meaningless spirals. He pointed upward, where distant stars gleamed like ancient eyes. But I think maybe what we are doesn't need their permission to matter. She tilted her head. For a moment, Elias swore he saw understanding. Then came the order. An official decree from the Hierarcheth Council. All unregistered fauna on Verakai were to be eradicated as part of a planetary biocontrol initiative. No exceptions. Elias read the document in silence, hands trembling. He knew it was aimed directly at Kaelara. The next morning, before first light, he woke her. Packed supplies. Loaded the sled. They traveled west, beyond the Red Canyon, where the outpost sensors couldn't reach. At the edge of a cliff bathed in dawn fire, Elias knelt. You can't stay with me. Not now. Kaelara made a sound, a low, keening warble. He placed a hand against her snout. You have to survive. Do you understand? She didn't move for a long time. Then she stepped back, spread her wings. Her eyes lingered on him. Then she leapt. White scales against crimson sky. She vanished into the horizon. Elias watched until the air was still. He returned alone. They took his research, erased his files, marked his act of release as a breach of contract. He didn't fight it. He resumed his days mapping rock formations, speaking only when spoken to. But when he walked the desert now, he looked to the sky, not in hope, but in certainty, because somewhere out there, Kaelara flew free. And she remembered. A month passed beneath the twin suns of Verakai, their heat bleaching the world of color, leaving only shades of dust and silence. Elias Varn's days blurred into a monotonous routine. Mark rock, catalog formation, transmit coordinates, repeat. The Hierarcheth barely acknowledged him now, treating him not as an annoyance, but as something already discarded. But Elias was not as alone as they believed. Each evening, under the guise of a terrain mapping assignment, he ventured beyond the monitored borders, past jagged obsidian ridges and sunburnt sand dunes, to a hidden canyon veined with mineral-rich stone. The entrance was narrow, too small for the Hierarcheth patrol crawlers, but Elias had memorized every handhold. He climbed down with practiced precision, boots sliding into dust as he descended into cool shadow. And there, waiting for him, was Kaelara. She had grown. No longer the injured fledgling he'd cradled in desperation. Kaelara now moved with confidence, muscles rippling beneath her pale scales. Her wings, once ragged and tattered, gleamed like sheets of frost and her eyes, always intelligent, now held something deeper. Awareness, not just of Elias, but of herself, her surroundings, the fragility and beauty of life beyond instinct. Elias removed his respirator and crouched beside her. She chuffed a greeting, nudging him with her snout, the touch heavy but careful. He laughed softly, brushing his hand along the ridge of her neck. Hungry, she tilted her head. He retrieved the pack from his shoulder and opened it. Inside, a sealed container of protein rations and nutrient paste. Kaelara had developed a taste for it, much to his scientific chagrin, and devoured the offering with enthusiasm. As she ate, Elias opened his notebook. Not digital. He learned the hard way that the hierarcheth could breach any system, no matter how secure. Instead, he used old-fashioned ink and paper. He had dozens of sketches now. Wing structures, tooth configurations, behavioral notes. He'd mapped her vocalizations, her resting cycles, even her dreams, twitches, low hums, the occasional snort that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Most astonishing of all, though, was her capacity to mimic. She began with sounds, replicating the beeping of Elias's equipment, the crackle of his comlink, even the subtle rasp of his boots in sand. Then, she progressed to words. "Elias," she said one evening, curling her tail neatly around her legs. Elias froze. "What did you say?" Kaelara blinked, then repeated, "Elias." Her voice was rough, not meant for human language, but the syllables were unmistakable. He dropped to his knees. "You remembered." She made a soft sound, part hum, part purr. "Elias," she said again, more confidently. He spent hours that night teaching her basic symbols, drawing shapes in the dirt, attaching sounds and meanings. She learned quickly, grasping abstract concepts with shocking ease. By the end of the week, she could identify colors, directions, and emotions with signs made from her tail and claws. The bond between them deepened, no longer grounded in necessity or pity, but something shared: respect, curiosity, trust. Yet even in the quiet sanctuary of the canyon, Elias felt pressure building like a storm behind glass. The hierarcheth were becoming restless. Patrols doubled. Drones scanned deeper into unmonitored regions. Rumors trickled through the outpost. Whispers of incursions on neighboring systems, of stolen biotech, of rogue fauna displacing local predators. And more than once, he saw Commander Zyro watching him. Not with derision now, but calculation. It was on a dusk-heavy evening that the breach came. He'd returned late from the canyon, clothes damp with sweat, hands sore from climbing. As he entered his quarters, the lights activated automatically, followed by the cold click of a plasma rifle charging. "Do not move." 2 guards, hierarcheth enforcers, and behind them, Zyro. Elias raised his hand slowly. "I'm unarmed." "We are aware," Zyro said, voice flat. "Your treachery has already spoken for you." "Treachery?" The commander stepped forward. "We track your movements. The creature lives. Still, you have lied, stolen, protected a specimen that now poses an ecological threat. She's not a threat. She's sapient. She speaks. She learns. She kills," Zyro replied. "We found the remains of 3 sandstalkers in the Western Gorge. Torn apart. She is a predator. She defended herself. You do not decide the laws of Verakai. The Council has reviewed your actions. The creature is to be terminated. Immediately." Elias took a step forward before a rifle jabbed his chest. "If you go near her," he said through clenched teeth, "she will kill you." Zyro regarded him with an expression Elias couldn't quite place. Not fear, not anger, perhaps uncertainty. "Then she will die as an enemy." That night, Elias made his decision. He could not fight the hierarcheth. Not directly, but he could outpace them. He gathered what little he could carry: rations, stimulants, medical supplies, his field journal. Then he slipped past the perimeter under the veil of night, his route mapped in silence and desperation. Kaelara was waiting. She always waited. He descended into the canyon and fell to his knees before her. They're coming. They know. They'll kill you. She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Elias, I need you to leave. Tonight. Fly. Don't come back. Her head lowered, pressing against his chest, and he heard a sound that shattered him. A low whimper. Not fear. Not pain. Grief. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have done more. I should have protected you better. She stepped back, wings unfurling. Then, to his astonishment, she turned, facing the far wall of the canyon, and let out a roar. A deep, resonant call that echoed for miles. From the shadows, movement, shapes, 4 of them, small, white, winged, juveniles. Elias staggered back. You found others? Kaelara looked over her shoulder, and in her eyes was something ancient and indomitable. She had not just survived, she had thrived. The juveniles gathered around her, chittering softly, mimicking her posture, her sounds. Elias could only stare. She had taught them, cared for them. She had become a matriarch, a leader. And suddenly he understood. The patrols, the restlessness, the whispers. Kaelara's presence had not gone unnoticed because she was hiding. It was because she was changing the balance. He stepped back, overwhelmed. You can't stay here, he said again, voice hoarse. They'll come with weapons. Kill you all. Kaelara didn't respond. She only stepped forward and gently touched her snout to his forehead. Then, without another sound, she took to the sky. The juveniles followed. White wings glinted under starlight, disappearing into the endless dark. By the time Elias returned to the outpost, alarms were already blaring. Scanners were detecting multiple aerial contacts leaving the canyon at high velocity. The HFY scrambled. Drones launched, but nothing could catch them. Nothing ever would. Elias said nothing during the interrogation. No matter how long they questioned him, threatened him, isolated him, he had nothing left to lose. Nothing except the knowledge that somewhere above the clouds, Kaelara soared free, no longer a secret, but a beginning. The tribunal convened in silence, a chamber of polished obsidian where truth was less an ideal than a performance. Elias stood before them, unchained but not free. Bright hololights cast harsh shadows across his face, exaggerating the wear etched deep into his eyes. Months had passed since Kaelara vanished into the heavens, taking her kin with her, and in that time, Elias had become more myth than man among the colonies. Some called him mad, others traitor. A few whispered of a guardian who walked with dragons. Zyril led the proceedings with the cold decorum of a surgeon. No expression passed over the HFY commander's angular features as testimony was read, data streams projected, and grainy footage displayed across the chamber wall. White wings slicing through twilight. Elias at the canyon entrance, arms outstretched. Heat signatures blooming as the creatures took flight. Evidence, they claimed, of willful betrayal. Elias said little. He let them speak, let them accuse. He understood now what they could not, what they were too bound by protocol and prejudice to see. Kaelara had not simply survived him. She had transcended him. His voice couldn't defend her any longer. Her existence alone was enough. Do you deny you trained the creature to evade our detection? Zyril asked, stepping forward. The commander's voice was cool, even as if discussing a statistical anomaly. I didn't train her to hide, Elias replied. I helped her understand us. That's what frightened you. Murmurs rose around the chamber, but Zyril didn't flinch. You admit she learned human language. military patterns, environmental manipulation. She learned empathy. You never bothered to. Zyral's gaze sharpened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he returned to the central dais, where the council's deliberation interface awaited their vote. The sentence, Elias knew, had already been drafted. He was never meant to return to Earth, nor to any human world. A quiet exile awaited him on some derelict moon, his work expunged, his name omitted from archives. Silence, the preferred method of erasure. But silence would not hold. Just as the vote commenced, a tremor rippled through the tribunal floor. Barely perceptible at first, like the distant rumble of atmospheric distortion. Council members stiffened. Technicians scanned their displays. Another tremor, then a deep, resonant boom that echoed through the foundation of the outpost. Klaxons blared. A disembodied voice announced an unauthorized breach in the upper atmosphere. Not a meteor, not a ship, a living form. Multiple. Elias turned toward the viewport. Through the glass, dark sky split open as something vast and brilliant descended. Not falling, but arriving. A creature of pale fire, wings outstretched, trailed by four smaller silhouettes. No longer fledglings. They had grown as Kaelara had grown. Their formation was tight, elegant, intentional. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Security shouted commands. Counselors scrambled for protected data cores, and Zyral stood frozen, eyes fixed on the impossible. Kaelara had returned, not as a hunted beast, but as a warning. As the others panicked, Elias stepped forward, pressing his palm to the cold glass. The white dragon soared closer, her eyes locking onto his. In them, he saw no rage, no violence, only purpose. She landed beyond the outpost walls with a grace that defied her size, dust swirling around her like a storm of stars. Her kin followed, each one settling behind her in formation. Their wings tucked in, heads lifted, not in aggression, but in reverence. "Open the gate," Elias said. "You are not authorized," barked a security officer, weapon trembling in hand. "She didn't come to fight, but she will if you force her to." Zyral turned toward him, lips parted as if to argue, but then he paused. There was something in Elias's expression that made even the hardened commander hesitate. Not defiance, not pleading, conviction, and perhaps, beneath it, something the Wyrarketh had not accounted for: hope. Against every protocol, against every instinct hardwired into his training, Zyral gave the nod. The gates opened. Elias stepped out alone, his boots crunching softly against the sand. The wind had died completely. Even the stars above seemed to hold their breath. Kaelara lowered her head as he approached, not as a subordinate, as an equal. He placed a hand on her snout, and she chuffed, warm breath washing over him. Behind her, the others waited, watching with intelligent eyes. They carried no harnesses, no weapons, only the presence of something greater than machines. Something remembered. Elias turned to face the outpost, now lined with soldiers and drones. No one fired. No one dared move. "She didn't come for vengeance," he said aloud, his voice carrying through the stillness. "She came to show you, to prove she isn't what you thought." "She endangered an entire settlement," Zyral called out, though the venom was gone from his tone. "She escaped lawful containment, breached planetary defense, and in return, she's offering peace, understanding, evolution." A moment passed, then another. Tension crackled like plasma. Then Kaelara did something unexpected. She bowed, lowered her wings, curled her body, and bowed her head to the assembled sentients. It was not mimicry. It was choice. Elias's breath caught in his throat. He stepped aside, allowing her gesture to speak louder than anything he could say. One of her young mimicked her, uncertain at first, then with clarity. The others followed. 5 dragons, white as bone and bright as stars, knelt before the species that once sought to extinguish them, not as beasts, but as emissaries. The gesture shook the outpost to its foundation, not in force, but in meaning. How do you respond to a creature you once labeled animal, now humbling itself before you? How do you process the implication that maybe, just maybe, you were the primitive one? The council did not make a statement that night, nor did Zyril give further orders. Instead, the gates remained open, and the dragons waited, patient and still, until the last light faded from the sky. And then, as silently as they came, they rose. Not in retreat, but in ceremony. A spiral ascension that painted white arcs across the heavens, their formation a symbol, a message, a promise. Elias watched them go, heart filled with something heavy and aching and brilliant. Not the end, only the turning of the tide. The days that followed were quieter than Elias expected. Not the silence of fear or suppression, but the kind that settles just before a storm breaks into sunlight. Across the colonies, images of the albino dragons returned spread like wildfire. The footage of Kaelara bowing reverently before the tribunal outpost became something sacred to many and a challenge to others. Entire networks of historians, xenologists, and independent philosophers began threading interpretations together, weaving a story that authorities could no longer control. The narrative had shifted, and Elias had become its reluctant axis. He was neither imprisoned nor exiled. There had been no verdict. After the dragon's departure, the tribunal simply dissolved. Some of the council members resigned. Others vanished behind bureaucratic curtains. Even Zyril, once the unshakable mouthpiece of interspecies order, retreated from public view. For the first time in Elias's life, the institutional machine paused. And in that pause, opportunity bloomed. He returned to the canyon, not as a fugitive, but as a guest. A transport dropped him off in silence. No one questioned him. The place was unchanged, jagged cliffs, ancient rock, and wind-swept emptiness that stretched toward the sky. But he was not the same man who had first stepped into it months before, clutching a data slate and bleeding suspicion. He walked until he reached the place where the nest had once been. The ground still bore marks of their presence. Shallow impressions, scorched stones, smooth grooves where massive tails had rested. It felt like a cathedral carved by nature itself, long before humanity learned to crawl. A shadow crossed the sun. He looked up. Kaelara descended alone, her flight slower, less about speed than grace. When she landed, the ground trembled faintly. Elias didn't flinch. He met her gaze, and something passed between them, deeper than language, older than science. She had changed again. Her scales shimmered like polished ivory, but hints of silver now threaded through her wings. Her eyes held stories, not just instincts. The young weren't with her this time. He imagined they had gone to scout, or perhaps learned from their own kind, if such kind still existed. Kaelara bowed again, not as before, but gently, like one greeting a brother. Elias approached, placing his hand against her chest where the thrum of her heart pulsed steady and strong. "You came back," he said. She blinked slowly. Then, to his quiet amazement, she spoke, not in his tongue, not fully, but in something between them, a blend of memory, shape, and sound that resonated in his chest rather than his ears. Promised. That one word hit him like a wave, not just because it confirmed what he hoped, but because it meant she remembered everything, not as an animal does, but as a companion. They sat together beneath the canyon walls for hours, wordless yet never truly silent. Kaelara's breath was steady. Her tail curled loosely around her body, not guarding, not defending, simply present. Elias began to speak, not in declarations but in fragments. He told her what had happened since she left, how the colonies had begun to fracture beneath the weight of doubt, how people questioned not only what had been done to her kind, but what might yet be possible if peace replaced dominance. He told her of the children who wore white-scaled cloaks and ran through the domed cities pretending to fly, of a senator who quoted her vow in a speech calling for cross-species cooperation, of a man in a bar who once threatened Elias, but now offered him a drink in stunned reverence. Kaelara listened. When the stars crept across the sky and cold settled in, she extended one wing and beckoned him beneath it. He lay beside her, warmed by her body and shielded from the night, and drifted to sleep with a strange comfort, a knowing that whatever the future held, it would no longer be built on lies. He awoke to a voice, not hers, but human, urgent. "Elias? Can you hear me?" He tapped the comm on his wrist. "I'm here." "Who is this?" "Commander Wren, off-world delegation. We've tracked Kaelara's descent and confirmed your location. We request a summit. With both of you." His heart thudded. "A summit?" "Yes. The Unified Galactic Assembly is assembling a new envoy. They want to meet her. Not for capture, for recognition." Elias looked at Kaelara, who regarded the comm with tilted curiosity. Her eyes sparkled, unreadable but aware. He hesitated. "She'll come if she chooses. That's all we can ask." The channel closed. Elias turned to her. "There's no obligation. But if you come with me, if they see you for who you are, everything might change." Kaelara moved slowly, rose to her full height, and stretched her wings. She didn't answer, didn't need to. The tilt of her head, the faint trill in her throat, it was enough. When the ship arrived, the world watched. It was not a battleship. No weapons. No escorts. Just a single diplomatic vessel outfitted for atmosphere re-entry and bearing the emblem of peace. When the ramp descended and the delegates stepped onto the sand, they bowed first, tentatively, awkwardly, but sincerely. Kaelara stepped forward, flanked by Elias. She stood tall, majestic, unafraid. A child among the delegation broke free of his father's grasp and ran forward before anyone could stop him. He carried something small, a sketch of Kaelara, drawn with shaking hands and vibrant colors. He held it up to her. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Kaelara lowered her head and gently blew a warm puff of air over the paper. The boy giggled, stumbling back into his father's arms. The delegates watched, stunned, and then, one by one, they began to kneel. Not to worship, to acknowledge, to understand. Later, in a city built on the edge of what was once contested land, Elias stood before a crowd of thousands. Kaelara perched behind him on a specially engineered landing terrace, her young circling high above. He cleared his throat. "Once, I was told that humanity's greatest strength was its will to conquer, that to survive among the stars, we had to subjugate what we didn't understand. I believed it. For too long, we all did. But I found something better. Compassion, curiosity, honor." He looked back at Kaelara, who lowered her head in gentle agreement. "We're not the masters of this galaxy. We're its students. And it's time we started learning again." The crowd erupted, not with cheering, but with something deeper, belief. A collective exhale, the beginning of something new. Elias stepped back, and Kaelara raised her wings. Above them, in the vast sky, her children painted arcs of white across the clouds. A symbol, a future, not ruled, but shared.